Today I'm going to show you why you need to master the art of walking away to make him miss you. So in this in-depth discussion, we're going to talk about some things that I don't think anyone talks about in relation to this topic. We're going to talk obviously about the theory of walking away to make people miss you, and at least why people think it works. We're going to talk about how the peak end rule ties into this. But also, I'm going to talk to you about the thing that everyone is afraid to tell you about walking away. And finally, why walking away isn't really about walking away. So if you're ready to go all in on this idea of losing the guy to get the guy, then you came to the right place. So let's first start at the top, the theory behind walking away to make a guy miss you. So let's address the elephant in the room. Does walking away from a guy actually make him miss you? Well, the truth is, no one can guarantee you anything. But generally speaking, walking away, be it a form of no contact or a form of finally standing up for yourself, usually creates a situation conducive to having them miss you. Of course, this wholly relies on your past partner having enjoyable memories with you. Think of it like this. We don't miss the people who made our lives miserable. Rather, we miss the people who we feel regret with. But more on that in a minute. For now, you're probably interested in the nuts and bolts of how this works psychologically. And in the past, I've written and recorded and filmed videos a lot about silence and its impact on making exes miss you. In a perfect world, here's how it's supposed to work. Our internal research shows two things. Our average client tend to have anxious attachment styles. I think something like 60% of our clients say, yes, I'm anxious, preoccupied. And our average clients' exes tend to have avoidant personalities. Over 70% of our clients believe that their exes have avoidant attachment styles. I think it balloons up to like 80 to 90% if you include fearful attachment styles within that as well. But really, if you're thinking about it, anxious and avoidant are the two most common pairings. This is not news to anyone who's listened to my podcast or who's watched my YouTube channel. In fact, I think I talk about this like in almost every video now. So these two are kind of like oil and water. Generally, when there's friction in the relationship, an anxious individual is going to find or react in a way that tries to fix things. They operate from a place where their worst nightmare is to be abandoned. And this contradicts with the avoidance core attachment modus operandi, which is independence. So you have one party pushing to fix things, and then the other party running away from that to get alone time. Now, after being in a relationship for a period of time, the avoidant person almost comes to expect this from the anxious person. They're going to try to fix things constantly. They're going to constantly need reassurance. So using silence, walking away is a new look that the avoidant really hasn't experienced from you before. So you're essentially giving your partner the space they desire, and doing so, research tells us, can actually be the thing that makes them miss you. So a few years ago, I recorded this video called How to Make an Avoidant Ex Miss You. And in that video, I cite this research that I got from a really great website called Free to Attach. And the quote goes like this: avoidants are free to long for an ex once that person is unavailable out of a relationship, and typically out of context, so they are untouched by actual engagement, and their deactivation systems aren't triggered, revealing their long-suppressed attachment and switching their operating attachment rune from a fear of engulfment to a fear of abandonment. So essentially, give an avoidant enough space and they begin to have what I've coined as nostalgic reverie. And this, weirdly enough, ties directly into the peak end rule. So if you're not familiar with what the peak end rule, then I suggest you watch some videos on it. But basically, the concept argues the following, and this is taken directly from Wikipedia. The peak end rule is a psychological heuristic in which people judge an experience largely based on how they felt at its peak, i.e. its most intense point, and at its end, rather than based on the total sum or average of every moment of the experience. Now, you can see why this concept interests me particularly. Generally speaking, when you're looking at the demise of a relationship, it's going to kind of look something like an average chart. You're going to have sort of the beginning, which is going to be this slow incline of a rise. You're going to have the middle, which is going to be kind of the peak of the relationship. This is the highest point of the relationship. And then the end, which is going to be this march downwards towards the end, which is generally marked as the low point. Now, usually when you're considering walking away, you're going to be at the end point of the relationship. And this means that things aren't particularly warm and fuzzy, rather, they're cold and harsh. And here's the thing though, your partner is only thinking about how they're feeling at that end point. And so one of the arguments to make for walking away is that it will give your ex or guy or whatever time to remember the peak moments. This plays into that nostalgic reverie concept I mentioned earlier. Walk away, give your partner time to remember the high points. Of course, this is completely contingent on one thing, that you actually had enjoyable peak moments. And this is the thing that everyone seems to be afraid to tell you. So figuring out what I was going to say for this discussion was actually pretty difficult. So I spent like 30 minutes spinning my wheels trying to find an interesting angle of attack. Now, generally speaking, when I write an article or film a video, my process is actually deceptively simple. A lot of people ask me, Chris, how do you figure this stuff out? The truth is, I'll choose my topic, and usually I'll immediately know what I'm going to say. But every once in a while, I'll get stuck and only have like a handful of ideas, something that's really not worth discussing at all. Now, usually if I'm in that predicament, I'll go to my peers and see what they're saying. I'll basically type in the topic to Google, see what other websites are saying, see if they're kind of digging in deep like they should be digging in deep. And for this particular discussion, that was what I did. And I found something interesting. But it wasn't actually anything that my peers specifically said. Rather, it had more to do with what they weren't saying. Walking away from a guy only works if they had an enjoyable time with you. That's the thing they're not telling you. My peers want to make it seem like walking away works in every situation, but it doesn't. To say that it does is false. Now let's use the peak end rule to basically illustrate the point that I'm making. So generally, when I talk about the peak end rule, I use a graphic that assumes the peak moments are positive. But what if all the peak moments were negative? Remember, peak moments don't always have to be positive. In some cases, they can be negative. So you walk away and expect your ex to remember the good times, but all they do is remember the bad times. What then? Well, generally in these cases, my advice would be to work on moving on. No relationship that has toxic moments as the peak moments is going to be worth getting back. So I'd like my attention to be turned to what most people do wrong when it comes to walking away. As you can imagine, running one of the largest breakup websites on the interwebs, there's a lot of discussion had on it that revolves around the no contact rule. One of the walking away methods. Now, what's funny about it is that there's often a common misunderstanding. People think that walking away really means walking away. They think all you need to capture their ex's attention is to simply use a no contact rule, sit on your hands, wait for him or her to come back begging. Except we know from research that doesn't usually happen. I think close to 60% of exes do not reach out to you during the no contact rule at all. The truth is that what you do with that time away from your ex is actually more important than actually ignoring your ex. So, like I said, in researching this discussion, I stumbled upon a video that I filmed a couple of months ago about silence and how it's effective. And there was a comment, it's actually the top comment of this video that I really think nails kind of the point of no contact. Here's what they said. They said, no contact works when you're actually getting things done. Going to the gym, taking care of your skin, getting that glow. When you achieve new things, get a side hustle that's better than your 9-to-5, you're actually leveling up financially, dressing well. Then your ex sees that, then they'll go crazy. They're right. Silence, walking away, no contact. Yes, they rely on your ex having good memories from their time together with you, but they also rely on something else, opportunity cost. If they had stayed together with you, then their life would be better than it is right now. Usually that requires you to actually do things or accomplish things that they are going to admire. Most people don't. They go through a breakup, get depressed or sad, and allow that to be their new reality. But a small few, look at the breakup as an opportunity. They go out, accomplish new things that captures their ex's attention, things that captures mutual friends' attention. So if you really think about it, walking away from a guy to make him miss you needs two things to really work. Number one, they need positive memories of their time together with you. And number two, They kind of need to see how good you're doing without them to create the regret that makes them miss you. Obtain these two things, and you're going to be in good shape.